Joel, I want to welcome you to the show here today.
Thank you very much. It's an honor. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And so let's get started. You can tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell the listeners, a little bit more professional than I did.
Absolutely. So like Jason said, Joel Nest. I've been in the security industry for just about 20 years now. Actually, I would say shy of 19 years. I just rounded 20 because it's easier number to remember, and a lot of
Right.
my memory is pretty much vague at this point. But what I did do is I did about 10 years overseas as a security contractor, mostly in Africa. I did work in the Middle East, so Afghanistan, and I worked in Israel and a few others. My passion, or I would say, yeah, my passion was working with the U.S. government. I really enjoyed it a lot. I worked on a lot of U.S. embassy contracts, especially U.S. embassies, which is funny because a lot of people kind of joke about Canadians working for the U.S. Department of State, but it's a fact and it does happen, and I'm a proven example of it. But one thing that did happen kind of through my life was actually getting into the private security industry was really hard for me because I didn't have military or law enforcement. And I know we're going to talk about leadership a little bit later on, but to be in a position where you know you want to be in the future or something that you want to get into and you have really you have no hope in hell you're ever going to do it, the best approach is to obviously push yourself farther than you could possibly imagine. And I had no choice but to do that. I had to surpass, and I wouldn't really say surpass in the meaning of like the ability of people that were in the military and law enforcement, but couldn't, I had to put my resume up on a higher level because I didn't have those qualifications that they did. And it's not just about military experience or actually working a duty in law enforcement. It's a lot about the leadership. It's a lot about the camaraderie. It's a lot about how the mechanism of the military and law enforcement actually work, that people actually learn. And when you don't have those core structures built into yourself, you really strive to try to get better than the next person beside you, especially in the private security industry where everybody's competition is very, very high. And like I was going up against special forces guys, everything. But excuse me, where my kind of focus wasn't the run and gun type of person or type of employee that I was trying to sought after. It was really the administration side. But I still had to learn all that other stuff like executive protection, advanced driving, just the other things that I needed for myself to work in these environments. But I really found a passion in working in the administration side. So when I was learning how the structure of the businesses worked, that's really where I started to survive a lot faster than a lot of others, because a lot of others wanted to do the executive protection details. They wanted to do all the high risk stuff, which is fine and dandy for me. But I enjoyed creating the operations. I enjoyed doing the logistics. I enjoyed hiring of the staff. I enjoyed payroll, scheduling, whatever it was. I just enjoyed that type of background work, so to speak. So that ended up happening for about 10 years. And then I eventually had my first son. And well, I didn't have him, but I was there when he was born.
Right.
But basically, after that, I knew that my life was going to change. There was no more going overseas and doing that type of work. So I found a job closer to home. I am now director of operations for a security company. I stayed within the field that I like so much. And since then, I've had the opportunity to work with some very big organizations here in Canada and even the Canadian government. And it's just been a crazy ride, but I got a lot of learning left, and I got a lot of road to travel. So it's one day at a time now.
Definitely. I never got into the personal protection detail stuff, but I feel for you guys, and I definitely feel for you when you talk about it's something you have to thrive in, and moving into that administrative role. That's the area for the people that really want to thrive in security, because not everybody wants to do that. Not everybody wants the pain and headache of, having to make
Right.
schedules and having to deal with all the HR issues that come along.
Yeah.
A
Yeah.
lot of guys,
Especially nowadays with all the um, no red marker, no, no, got to be very, very soft pedaling around certain issues. It's a lot different nowadays than it was 10 years ago.
yeah, yeah. And I know down here, um, where I'm at, it's fairly low pay, especially the entry level. And a lot of guys they just want to sit on the in the vehicle and stare at the building and make sure no one's breaking in or whatever. But it's for those that want to thrive in it and actually take the initiative to step up and move up, is where you're gonna you know build those leadership skills. And uh, so that's kind of what I want to talk about next.
Absolutely.
What what are some of the tips that you have for those people moving up from the front lines or moving up, in the ranks?
Yeah. I, one that I tell even our staff is, I'll be blunt on this, but I don't really, I kind of soft pedal it when I'm talking to other people, but it really is paying your dues, understanding what you're doing, because when you get to a level that's higher and you don't have the answers for it, you don't affect yourself, you affect everybody beneath you. And what people really have to understand is when you're put in a position, especially, I shouldn't say especially mine, I mean anybody, a person that's a supervisor or a team lead or a shift lead or whatever it is, you don't always have that opportunity to go to the next level up for an answer. So your answer has to be on demand, and it has to be something that you feel comfortable in directing your staff to do. I've never directed my staff to do anything that I wouldn't do. I mean, this sounds dumb, but I've even literally, and I apologize for swearing, but I've literally washed crap off the floor because I didn't want my staff to do it, because I thought that that was something that was just, it's something that they shouldn't be doing to begin with, not part of their duties. However, it is part of mine so that the client is happy at the end of the day. A happy client is happy. It will continue the contract throughout. And I really always try to instill into the staff that your your actions don't just affect yourself, and this is now on the staff level, but your actions don't affect yourself, they affect everybody throughout the company. And what I mean by that is when you are showing up to work, your presentation needs to be 100%, because that's the first thing the client sees. Next is your personality, because that's also how they interact with you. And they want to make sure that you are understanding of every policy and procedure that's on the site or through the client or whatever it is. But if you don't at least adhere by those three, and at the end of the day something does happen and it is 100% your fault, what people don't understand is that it's not just going to be your job that could be lost, it could be everybody's job on the site. And I try to make sure people understand that, not out of fear, because I don't want them to be scared to come to work and think that they're going to be the reason that everybody loses their job, but for the professionalism that they are accountable, and everybody on the site is accountable for the client, including myself. If I make a mistake, I literally have to be at the phone 24/7 for my clients. If I'm not, and they call me at 3 in the morning with an emergency, I could have affected the contract. I could have lost the jobs for everybody. And at the end of the day, that really hurts me. And I don't want people to lose the shirt off their back. I don't want to lose the roof over their head. And I sure as hell don't want to lose the food on their table for their families. So I have to be 100%. And when I talk to people, and sometimes I hear the joking comment where, like, when ask people in interviews or something, what do you want to be in 5 years? And they'll say something like, oh, I want to be in your job. And I think, okay, do you really understand what my job entails? Because at the end of the day, you're committed to your family, but you're committed to the business. And I think people need to understand that, because the higher up you go, all the CEOs, the directors, when you get to that level, you don't have holidays. You don't have time to yourself. You don't have time. You have time to your families. Don't get me wrong. But the amount of times I've gone fishing in the last 3 weeks, it's been about that. And for those of you listening, it's a big fat zero. So there are times when you don't get time to yourself, and you have to be okay with that. You can't let it mentally disrupt your everyday life. You can't let it keep you up at night. You have to go through every day as it's a process, as it's another task that's going to have to be met. And your days are never ever the same, and they're never ever scheduled, especially in our line of work, because everything is so fluid. One day I could be dealing with the police. Next week we're dealing with the military. The day after that I'm dealing with protesters. Day after that I'm dealing with something. Like, it's never ever the same thing, and all 3 or 4 or 5 could be combined in the same day, and you have to be okay with that too. And then you have to worry about your mental health. You have to worry about how to keep yourself sane. So we're going to talk about podcasting later, but podcasting is my measures to be able to keep myself from basically going crazy, for a better choice of words. But that's how I feel in a nutshell, especially about leadership.
Definitely. And I think the two big things you touched on there are servant leadership, and then service before self. The servant leadership, going and doing what your guys are doing, or your ladies, for everyone out there. I just say guys, obviously being in former military, but
Yeah.
and then excellence in all we do, and service before self is that being there for the client, or your company if you're not a contract. You have your own interior CEOs and COOs that you got to please. But yeah, it's always looking out for them and making sure that those goals are met. And I've had full episodes on servant leadership, and I think that's one of the big things that I like to preach on this podcast is servant leadership, because uh, like you said earlier, you got to walk the walk, and you got to be in the shoes that you're leading, because like you said, otherwise you're not going to be able to answer the questions when those guys come to you, or those girls, and ask you about something. So
Absolutely. And I just want to touch on that for a quick second. And when, like, I'll admit straight up, I'm nobody's role model. Like, everybody makes mistakes 100%. I, I lead by example is the best way I can put it. I do make mistakes just like everybody else does, but all of the people that work for us know that at any time of the day, my phone line is always open. But what they also understand is my answer might not be the one that they want, but at least I will hear them out. And at least I will give them the fair option to voice their opinion or their concerns. And I will try to help them the best way I possibly can, that is the best for them. And unfortunately, in their circumstance, the best for the company as well, because they're the one providing the job. But for all in all, I really, really try to help out as much as I possibly can.
yeah, I've been there, and I've worked, like you said, holidays. I've worked holidays when my staff needed a day off, and
Yeah.
I've had to go in full uniform when I usually would wear business casual, and I'd have to wear. Well, Joel, thank you for coming on the show, man. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
sharing your knowledge, and uh, I know we went a little over, but this was all good stuff, man.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
And how can people get a hold of you if they want to?
So you can go to my website, www.ruckupmedia.com. That's ruckmedia.com, and message us there. We're all over social media at Ruck Up Podcast and Conspiracy Debunking Conspiracy Theories.